Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about wheat and rice stocks depleting in the country and the concerns it raises. We also talk about a case of alleged gang rape involving two Indian bureaucrats. But first, we talk about Sourav Ganguly. Last week, we came to know that the BCCI, the governing body for cricket in the country, has denied Ganguly the opportunity to serve as the president for a second term. And after that, Ganguly confirmed to the Indian Express that he would now be contesting to become the president of the Cricket Association of Bengal. These developments have raised questions about the possible reason he was not allowed to serve another term and the reason why he got to become the president in the first place. In this segment, we speak to Indian Express's national sports editor Sandeep Dwivedi about this issue and the political context behind it. Sandeep, so do we know why the BCCI decided not to allow Ganguly to serve a second term as the president?
So it's $1 million question. I don't exactly know. See, the point is that the elections would be later today. But the whole point is that in BCCI, the election doesn't matter. The selection matters more. So much before the elections, generally they had a consensus where they have decided that Sourav Ganguly won't be there. He's not even filed his nomination. So he's as good as a former BCCI president now. See, the reasons could be many. There is, of course, the political intrigue, which I am sure like everybody should be aware of or they would be reading about it. It's about BJP trying to woo Sourav Ganguly, making him the president because they thought that, or it was generally believed that they wanted him to be the face of BJP before the last Bengal Assembly elections. That never happened.
Right, so at least the assumption here is that they made Sourav Ganguly the BCCI president so that he could help the BJP campaign in the state.
Exactly. And Ganguly is massive in Calcutta in case if he had aligned with BJP and if he was the BJP face in the election, I'm sure it would have made an impact. BJP, as you guys know, went on to lose those elections. And so Ganguly is very close to Mamata Banerjee, the TMC leader and the party there. So it was very difficult, like everybody was quite intrigued to, like they were all waiting that Ganguly will actually become the BJP face or not. Like there would be huge speculations whenever there would be, say, a Modi rally in Calcutta. People would wait that will Ganguly be on stage or not. So he never was on stage. So yeah, he was neutral and he has a mind of his own historically. He has been India's most charismatic skipper, and the strength of Ganguly was in cricket field also that you never know what he's thinking, which is a huge advantage as a cricketer.
Right, and if this is true that he was made the BCCI president so that he could help the BJP, it didn't really work out for them because, like you said, he didn't end up campaigning for the BJP. So this is the political intrigue side of it. What could be the other reasons?
See, if you ask me purely as a cricket watcher, Ganguly as a cricket administrator, there were lots of hopes all around from the media, from the players, because he was the first test cricketer to be the BCCI president. And this came post Lodha reforms where there was this huge talk about players getting representation in leadership. And Ganguly being one of the most successful ever captain who actually was responsible for the team of early 2000, right? So everybody thought that, yeah, he would also turn around cricket administration with him at the top. Players had, it was almost like apna time aa gaya hai. But that never happened because I think loads of conflict of interest questions during his tenure, like he would endorse a fantasy league company when BCCI was already endorsed by a rival company. He was like a brand ambassador of a business group which owned IPL franchise. So there are several things which didn't really go. It was very un-BCCI president-like behavior, and you see, once the president starts doing it, it trickles down. Then we had virtually everybody endorsing fantasy leagues. And there's a very thin line between what is fantasy league and which is a betting site. So that was a massive issue. So he didn't come out really shining during his tenure. But to say in BCCI, if you're just sacked because of your performance, that's not how it works historically, or else quite a few people would have been sacked. But yeah, it could be a mix of both. There was, of course, the politics of it. Plus, Ganguly didn't come out shining as a BCCI administrator, which everybody thought he would be.
And talking about conflict of interest, one of the other things that stood out was that apart from being the BCCI president, Ganguly was also the director of the football club ATK Mohun Bagan. And ATK later went on to win the bid to own the Lucknow IPL team, right?
So yeah, that's interesting background in the sense when BCCI wanted to increase the numbers of team in IPL, they wanted to grow from 8 to 10. So there was tenders floated about which the two new teams will be. And one of the people who got the new team status was a team with which Ganguly had a commercial connection. And at that point, he was the BCCI president, very much part of the entire tender process, very much part of the entire selection process. So that also was not really good optics. But again, the definition of conflict of interest is very different for Sourav, because he's been repeatedly asked this question. He's always said that, boss, there are two different things. I can be part of it, but I'm not favoring anybody because I'm neutral. So that has been their logic all the while, but it doesn't work in the real world. Conflict of interest is very clear when it comes to its legal definition, when it comes to the administrative definition. And the massive problem with BCCI, the entire court case post the 2003 spot fixing saga, the basis of that entire country was conflict of interest. That is how it all started. Srinivasan was owning a team while he was the secretary, and that's where everything happened, right? So these are the things which cricket has to be very much aware of, and Ganguly was not setting the right example by doing the things which he should have not.
And now Ganguly has said that he would be contesting to become the president of the Cricket Association of Bengal, CAB. And with this, we are back to the political side of things where Ganguly is looking to find hope in Bengal again.
See, Ganguly being the president of Bengal or Eden Gardens is as same as Shashank being appointed the president of his own house, right? It is as simple as that. If your family members have to vote for you, definitely they will. So for Ganguly to be the CAB president is absolutely easy. It's his backyard. He's the greatest icon from that place. Now imagine this is the guy who was being, there was a tug of war between him so that he could be the CM face. Now what is a CAB president for him? But again, these are very good optics. That again, the politics that is at play. Within days of him being asked, not being selected as the BCCI president, he gets nominated as the CAB president. So, which shows that Calcutta, or the people in Calcutta, or the cricket administration, or the politics there, they're trying to show that Dada is still ours. So that doesn't matter to him.
Right, and on Monday, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee expressed her shock at Ganguly not getting renominated for the post of the BCCI president. And she even said that she will request PM Modi to allow him to contest for the ICC president. So with this, you clearly have the biggest political leader in Bengal effectively saying that she is on his side.
He's been deprived. Why he's been deprived? What is his fault? Everybody knows him. All the country, all the world. I request to Prime Minister ke. My humble regards to the Prime Minister. Please take care that Sourav must be allowed to contest the ICC election.
Yeah, that's exactly trust Mamata to take it to a level which was not seen till now. So that actually made it from state politics to national politics for a position in international cricket. So, the scale just went up. But again, it's all the whole politics of it. I don't know how seriously would PM Modi take TMC President Mamata's word on this. But again, it's a whole politics playing out. There has been a TMC versus BJP in Calcutta. And now these guys have the best opportunity because now this is being seen as a betrayal of BCCI, and BCCI has a secretary in Jay Shah who happens to be Amit Shah's son. So this is the whole politics of it. He wasn't wanted in BCCI, so TMC is now almost re-owning Sourav Ganguly, their icon, saying that, okay, he's our guy and we have to protect his interests. So they have scaled it up and taken up to the PM's level to say that I don't know what role a PM could have in the cricket politics, or isn't it too trivial for him to intervene? Will he or will he not? Again, it's a guessing game. For at least for a day, there will be headlines about Mamata saying that, I'm the only person in this country who is worried about Dada.
And next we talk about wheat and rice. The stock of both wheat and rice with government agencies have dropped to a 5-year low. And this has happened even when the retail prices of cereal have remained high. In fact, it was at a 105-month high in September. Now, this is especially concerning because millions of people in India depend on receiving free or subsidized grains from the government. In this segment, Indian Express's Rural Affairs editor Harish Damodaran joins us to talk about the reason why the stocks have plunged.
I think it all started with India having a very low wheat crop. You had a sudden surge in temperatures during March, April. So that completely, I think, decimated the wheat crop yields, because of which the government was able to, I think, procure hardly about 18 million tons of wheat, whereas last year they had procured about 43 million tons. So wheat procurement fell, and at the same time, the government was continuing to distribute large quantities of grain. I think last year, totally, I think about something like about 105 million tons of rice and wheat got channelized through the public distribution system under different schemes, the regular PDS plus the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, which is basically a free grain scheme. So I think about 105 million tons of rice and wheat was sold. And plus India, I think, exported a record quantity of both rice and wheat. I think something like about 28 million tons of rice and wheat. So both were records, So nobody could have imagined this at the start of the year, where you had overflowing go-downs. So I would say that the main reason was a poor wheat crop, and which in turn has put more pressure on rice. Because since you're committing yourself that I will make available so much of grain, so therefore rice has to do all the heavy lifting. And that in turn has put pressure on the rice stock.
Right, and you have written that there is also a lot of uncertainty about the next rice crop that will be harvested. Could you talk about why that is the case?
See, you had a very completely erratic kind of a monsoon. I mean, during June, July, it hardly rained, especially in the Gangetic Plain states, UP, Bihar, Jharkhand and West Bengal, right? And these are very large rice-consuming states also. Apart from being producing states, they are mostly rice eaters. So you had that, and plus you had these rains. After mid-September, you had rains everywhere. So we really don't know how this rice crop is going to be. So I'll say that there's a lot of uncertainty today on rice, wheat, and maybe to some extent even sugar. So where the government has practically banned exports. So whereas these three were some things where India was always surplus, right? I mean, we've been hearing about grains rotting in FCI godowns now for the last, many years. Whereas you don't have those kind of overflowing warehouses today.
And Harish, in a country like India where so many people depend on free and subsidized grains, what concerns does this situation raise where stocks of wheat and rice are really low?
See, because maybe for the last 10 years, when we talked of food inflation, it had more to do with protein items. It had more to do with dal than roti. It had to do with pulses. It had to do maybe with milk, chicken, even vegetables and all. So I think this calorie inflation is something which we are seeing coming back after a very long time. I think 11.5% inflation in cereals was what we saw. So that definitely complicates the job for the government, because cereals and carbohydrates are basic. We are not talking of proteins. We are not talking of fats. We are not talking of vitamins, minerals, dietary fiber. We are talking of basic things, right? I mean, basically roti. We are not even talking of dal or doodh or anything. So definitely, I think this complicates the entire thing.
And by this, do you specifically mean in terms of the schemes that the government provides?
Number one is the schemes, of course, because as you know, during the pandemic, virtually the only social safety net India had was free grain. Unlike other countries, right? Maybe the US and all, they provided a lot of stimulus in the form of cash, etc. Whereas effective social safety net India had was grain, right? And everybody got it. We saw that nobody starved, right? I mean, there was hunger, but there was no starvation, which made, I think, the last pandemic very different from earlier famines, the Bengal famine, the 1967 Bihar famine, When you go into the history, this was probably the first natural calamity, a kind of a pandemic where people didn't die for want of basic food. So definitely, yes. The PDS commitment is something which is huge, and which is why you see that every quarter they have been extending the scheme, right? The Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana kind of a scheme. So now I would say there is a lot of uncertainty on two counts. One, of course, this is apart from the fact that we don't know how the present rice crop is going to be. But more importantly, the next wheat crop, the sowing hasn't started. Sowings will start maybe from October end onwards. But this crop will not arrive in the markets till around March end. April is when the harvesting. So we don't know the fate of the next crop. What is it going to be? So for about 5 months, we don't have much of wheat, So managing those supplies is going to be very tough. And how much of heavy lifting can rice continue to do? When rice production itself, we don't know what the kind of pressure is going to be. And secondly, what has happened is, I think you had renewed tensions now in Ukraine. So because of that, even international prices are a little, so that makes things slightly more difficult, I think.
Okay, so considering that stocks are low and we are not sure about the next rice crop and international prices are also volatile, what can the government do in this situation?
I would say that, India may have to import. It makes sense to import about 2 to 3 million tons, and which is not feasible for the private trade. Because imported wheat, even if you were to buy the cheapest wheat, which is from Russia, that wheat, if it lands in the Indian ports, it will be more than 30 rupees a kg. So obviously, it's not viable for the private trade or for private millers to import. So I would say that it makes sense for the government to import maybe 2 to 3 million tons and just keep it. You can even keep it in the port. So that grain can be used not for giving it out free, but it can be used for open market operations. As I said, there is a long period from between now and till March end, where there is hardly any wheat coming into the market. The supplies have more or less dried up. So during this period, it makes sense for the government to import and just keep it, sort of replenish its stocks. Because since the stocks, as we said, are very low, they're close to the minimum buffer norm. So they can import it and just keep it, and which can be used as some kind of a, market intervention kind of a thing. And government can afford it, because it will be on government account, but whereas the private trade will not do it. So I would say that is something which the government should very seriously think about.
And next we talk about a story involving two Indian bureaucrats. Jitendra Narayan, who was the Chief Secretary of Andaman and Nicobar Islands until 3 months ago, and R.L. Rishi, who is the Labour Commissioner in the Union Territory and who was suspended yesterday. Both of them have been accused of sexually assaulting and gang raping a 21-year-old woman in Port Blair. After suspending Rishi, a statement by the Ministry of Home Affairs said that the government is committed to ensuring zero tolerance towards the acts of indiscipline by its officials, irrespective of their rank and status, especially with regards to incidents involving the dignity of women. When we spoke to Indian Express's Ritu Sarin about this case, she told us about the allegations that have been made by the victim.
The allegations, of course, the principal allegation is that she was raped, and not only raped, brutally raped, violently raped on 2 occasions. And allegation is that this was done in the then Chief Secretary's official residence. This allegedly happened around April and May of this year, and she was desperately looking for a job. I think she had lost her father or a parent, and she met someone else who introduced her to a hotel owner whose name is also in the FIR. The hotel owner introduced her to R.L. Rishi, who then took her allegedly to meet the then Chief Secretary, Jitendra Narayan.
The complainant says that at his residence, she was offered liquor, which she refused, and was assured a government employment, and that later she was brutally and sexually abused by the two men. She also says that 2 weeks later, she was again called to the Chief Secretary's residence and the assault was repeated. This time, she says, instead of the promised job, she was threatened with dire consequences if she spoke about the matter to anyone. Since then, an FIR has been lodged at a local station in Port Blair, and the police have set up a special investigation team to probe her allegations. And besides the two bureaucrats, the investigation now also includes the alleged role of a local news channel.
So apparently on the YouTube, some details were put out which indirectly identified the complainant. And you know the provisions of Indian penal laws and directions of the Supreme Court that in no way in the case of allegations of rape is the identity, the circumstances, the address, the whereabouts of any alleged rape victim to be revealed. So obviously in this case some indirect revelations were made, and the complainant in fact then filed a separate complaint to the police. When the SIT was set up and when the FIR was lodged, these people have been included in the FIR. So they are also now facing charges of alleged character assassination of this 21-year-old and the police inspector of Andaman for leaking information to the girl who did the YouTube story. So I think the pressure is on. The police officials in Andaman certainly delayed lodging an FIR, which is also a violation of laws. But now they have done it and also set up the SIT. She has also filed a case in court before the magistrate. So that is going on. And both sides, I suppose, will make claims and counterclaims. So there is a police case, there is a case in court, and there is the SIT looking into the whole gamut of the issue, including the media leak.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.